Training your managers the wrong way could be the most costly thing you do in your business. You're going to miss out on bringing in new revenue. You're going to miss your revenue goals. You're going to lose clients. You're going to lose team members. And the worst part, you're going to lose so much time, maybe even years. In this video, I'm breaking down how you could train your managers and build a management training process so you can remove yourself 100% from the business and just focus exclusively on growth. There's only 4 things you need to know to do this effectively. And the first thing is expectations. Now, for expectations, this doesn't matter if you're onboarding new managers, you're training new managers, or you have new managers that you need to realign with. There's only 3 expectations you need to set for your managers. They are responsible for being able to execute your operational plan, being able to develop your talent so they get better and better and better, and being able to keep your talent so they never leave and you have to go hire a bunch of more people, because that's the most costly thing for your company. That's it. As long as you have the appropriate expectation set, you need to just be able to train them well. Let's dive in real quick to see how you can do that for these 3 things. Now, like I said, the first component of this is being able to have them execute your operational plan. Now, this isn't too hard. This does require you to have an operational plan, which basically means being able to set very clear goals. Now, let's say you have a sales manager. Their job on their team might be closing 20 new deals a month or 30 new deals a month. If that's the number one goal they need to be able to accomplish, everything has to be a subset of that. So your first objective is providing your managers with an operational plan or an operational goal on an annual, quarterly, monthly basis so they can execute it. When you're training your managers, you need them to understand, number 1, how benchmarks are actually set. Number 2, how the benchmarks and goals are going to be communicated to them. Number 3, how they should be reviewing the plan with the team and getting the team prepared to execute that. And number 4, holding the team accountable. When it comes to benchmarks, this one's really simple. This just basically means on an annual, quarterly, and monthly basis, you are providing the goals and targets for your managers. Your job is to hold these annual meetings, these quarterly business reviews and monthly business reviews where you set the goals, you set the targets, and then you disseminate that information down to your management team, or you include your managers inside that meeting so they know exactly what the targets and goals are. Like I said, on sales teams, that's how many sales do we need to close per month. On fulfillment teams, that might be what our average lifetime value is per client or our average monthly churn rate is. And very specifically, that could also be what our goals are per account. So if we have an SEO business and we have 20 accounts, we might be setting very specific goals per each of those 20 accounts and disseminating that information to the managers, or they might be responsible for that as well. When it comes to communicating your benchmarks and goals in onboarding and in training and management, you need them to be aware, hey, on the first of every month or the last week of every month, you're going to get next week's or next month's plan. So I need you to have that on your checklist or have that on your project management dashboard to be ready to receive that and review that before the week starts. As it relates to disseminating that plan to the team, I usually encourage on the first Monday of every new month, reviewing the upcoming month's plan so the team is aware of what the benchmarks and objectives are. Some businesses like to set these objectives in the last week of the month so they could plan for the month ahead, or they like to conduct these meetings on the first week of the month so the managers can communicate that. Your role as leadership is to be able to train your managers on how you want them to run these meetings and how to communicate these goals to their team. It's different for every business, so that's why I'm not going so specific here. And the final part of this is how they hold team members accountable. Now, there's a lot of different processes and tools on how you could hold team members accountable, and I find that the biggest barrier for growing businesses is accountability. As your company grows and you go from 5 to 10 to 20 to 30 to 50 to 100 employees, the reason team members and businesses underperform is their team members just simply aren't executing. And that's a lack of accountability and a lack of performance and a lack of development. Now, you need to give your managers the tools and processes in order to execute. So I'm going to give you a few so you're aware of what those are. Now, the first process, I already gave this to you. This is the process responsible by leadership with our managers. One of the easiest and simplest processes are their operations meeting. Every manager with their team should hold a monthly operations plan meeting and a weekly operations planning meeting. In this meeting, the managers are reviewing the goals, reviewing the barriers from the prior month, and reviewing with their team to make sure they're ready to execute. Like I said, every business does this differently, but on a weekly basis, this should be really simple. Let's say you have 3 account managers. Under each manager, they would be responsible for coming to those managers during their monthly and their weekly meetings and stating their objectives and stating if they're on track or off track. On a monthly basis, they're basically going into that meeting saying, here is what I executed in the prior month, here's what I missed, and here's what my lessons were. Here's what I'm going to do differently coming into this month. And then on a weekly basis, it's the same thing except only weekly. And when a team member comes prepared to a meeting and if they're missing execution, they need to say what they're going to do to execute moving forward. It's the manager's job to track with that team member that they're actually executing those goals. So that's the first process that a manager could hold. It's their operation meetings. The two final ones for accountability are daily and weekly end of day reporting and end of week reporting. Every team member should have some form of a project management checklist. Basically, what I call it as is standard work. These are the things that your team members must execute on a daily and weekly basis to ensure we're on track to execute for every single account. Now, you need to provide standard work per team member. They need to report out on a daily and weekly basis. But if they're submitting that to a reporting channel every single day and every single week, all your managers have to do is make sure that they're reviewing that. Because if a manager is reviewing that report, they're going to know if your business is trending correctly or trending incorrectly. So it's your job to teach them that process. It's your job to train them on that process. And if you don't have that process, you need to make that process. You can see here on the screen, this is a quick example of what end of day reporting looked like in my business in December of 2023. Every single team member on a daily basis submits their checklist. As leadership, it's your job to train your managers on how to audit, what they're looking for, and basically teaching them how to catch when things are trending behind. Now, the final tool and the final process that you could use is ad hoc audits. At Amazon, we had a specific amount of audits that we had to do on our team every single week. Now, it's your job as leadership to provide what those audits are. So I'll give you two quick examples. If you have a sales manager, it's their job to audit at least 1 or 2 sales calls per day per employee. If you have an operations manager who's overseeing a team of account managers, it's their job to audit 1 of their account management calls per week, or their job to audit the account management strategy per week. This needs to be something in their checklist that they audit, that they click a box, that they submit that they did it, and they should also be sharing findings in those audits. The reason we do this, and the reason you need to explain to your managers as to why they do this, standards will eventually drop. It's called the drift. It's a psychologically proven concept in organizations, and your managers need to understand if they do not audit on a daily and weekly basis, eventually standards will drop. So you need to teach your managers through these processes how to audit. When we do all of this, this leads us to the second component of the management function, which is development. Now, the purpose of development is to make sure your team members keep getting better. If your business keeps delivering better results and it keeps making clients happy, they won't leave, and your business will get better and better and better. Your manager's jobs are to develop your team members on how to do this. Now, through all of the audits, we have the weekly meetings, the operations meetings, we have the end of day reporting, and we have the ad hoc audits. They're basically seeing, is my team on track to execute on the goals that we set? If they are off track, this is when they will start to perform coaching conversations. Now, the purpose of a coaching conversation is to teach someone how they could move from point A of underperformance to point B of good performance. And a lot of times, coaching conversations are just periods of checking in to make sure your team members already have a good plan in place, because a lot of times they do. There's something I call the 5-step coaching process. The 5 points are seeking to understand, root causing the issues, bridging the gap, coaching towards the inputs, and assigning actions. Let's break through all 5 so you could train your managers on how to do all 5. Now, the reason we teach our managers how to do this is we give them a formal process on how to coach team members. If we do not, they're going to bring in bad habits from other jobs on how they received coaching, which is most likely wrong. This is a good standard that I got from my time at Amazon. So step 1, seek to understand. Every manager needs to go into a conversation with an underperforming employee with curiosity. It's called the stew at Amazon. This is where they're going into a conversation curious. Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Employee, I want to check in on you. I noticed we're underperforming in this one area, and I wanted to see what you thought was going on. Through that process, they're coming and asking questions. They never come in and are making blatant statements. They're curious. This allows our managers to always stay in rapport with our team members, and this allows our team members to always feel like they have safety with their managers. This is going to be critical for retaining talent because we don't want to create a toxic work environment, which this helps us avoid. Step number 2 is root causing. We want to train our managers on something called the 5 why. The 5 why analysis is a simple operational process that allows us to root cause. Root causing means that we identify the root of why we are missing an objective, the root, the core of why we missed something. 5 why analysis says that we should ask why 5 times to identify what the root cause is. So when you're training management on it and they go in with a seek to understand conversation, they could say, hey, Allie, I noticed that we're underperforming on this account's YouTube channel. Can you explain why you think this is? That's number 1. Allie will explain how she believes they're underperforming because the account might not be getting good click-through rate. The manager would then say, great, I appreciate you explaining that. Why do you think we're not getting a good click-through rate? Allie would then keep going. She'd say, well, click-through rate is usually dependent on either thumbnails or titles. We've already been testing titles, so I think we don't have good thumbnails. And once again, we would go, why? Well, let me ask you this. Why don't you think we have good thumbnails or our thumbnails aren't performing? And then you would keep asking why until you identify the root cause. You want to train your managers that there are only 2 types of process issues. There's process-related issues or people-related issues. 90% of the time, we need our managers to look for the process defect as to why our team members are underperforming. Did our team members not receive good training? Did we not have a good operational process? And only under those conditions where we truly root cause it's not process oriented, we could then focus on how the employee is doing something wrong. But through this process, when we identify the root cause, it would allow us to start to bridge the gap. In this example, we would focus on step number 3 once we identify the root cause, which is bridging the gap. When we are developing our talent, we need to show them what they were doing versus what is good. This is when you want your managers to be able to coach on their own terms. They basically display to their team members what they can do better. So this is why it's so critical to have subject matter experts as managers so they can go on the fly and explain their perspective on how to deliver better results. Once they do this, you want them to coach towards inputs. This basically means that they're coaching and giving feedback on things that team members can control, not outputs or not goals, but things that are input related focused. Whenever they identify and coach and develop towards inputs, you want them to assign SMART actions. SMART actions are basically assigning specific, measurable, achievable, and relevant actions that are time bound. That stands for SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. When they give those actions, they assign that in their project management checklist so they can then follow up on those actions and then make sure your team members are doing better. This is the simplest way you need to train your managers on how to develop talent. If they are always auditing performance, always comparing the performance of where you're at and where you want to be, and using this 5-step coaching process on how to get your team members better, your team members will naturally get better as long as you communicate well. And the final component of this, the third and final component of how your managers need to execute your plan, is retaining your talent. Talent churn is the number 1 reason why companies don't grow. It's the biggest cost you can incur in a business. And here's why. If you lose your talent, then you have to pay to source, onboard, hire, and train new talent, which will result in your management and your team's resources going into training, which means you don't have bandwidth to keep growing, which means you're probably reduced in the ability to deliver results, and you'll probably lose clients. You do not want to churn your talent. When you're training your managers, you want to make them aware of the few things that they can do to actually keep your talent. Now, the first thing is having candid conversations around compensation. On an annual level, you want your managers to sit down with your team members and ask them how much they want to be making in the next 12 months and the next 3 years. It's the manager's job to extrapolate this information, thank your team for sharing it with them, and then build a plan to see if it's achievable or if it's not. The reason we do this is we need to make sure that we are able to share what is realistic with our team members and what's not. So you need to train your managers on how to have these conversations, and then you need to train them on how to track it in a dashboard. If you do these things, you'll know, number 1, if you can keep your employees happy by giving them a path to earn how much they want to earn, or number 2, some team members are going to give extravagant numbers, and those are the people that you should be aware of you'll probably lose. Once you know your team members' financial goals, you need to help understand what their professional goals are. They want to extrapolate where they want to be at professionally in the next 1 to 3 years. And every year and every quarter, you want them to build a plan to help their team members develop skills. The manager's job is basically to give them resources, give them opportunity, and give them training on how to get better. If your managers can help your team members do this, your team members will feel like they are always growing. Number 3, in this annual conversation, you need them to ask what they want to accomplish personally. And same thing, you want your managers to track their personal goals on a short-term and long-term basis. You want your managers on a monthly and quarterly basis to continually check in, provide the resources, insights, and ideas on how your team members could accomplish their personal goals. And number 4, it's understanding your team members' love language. Now, this one's a little bit unique, but hear me out. I want you to have each team member take the love language assessment. Basically says every individual wants to be acknowledged or appreciated within one of 5 ways. When your managers know this will help your managers understand how they could appreciate or communicate to your team members. Some team members want acts of service, which basically means for a manager, they need to go out of their way to remove things for the team member or to do things to help the team member. Some team members literally want gifts. Gifts can be one of the 5 primary love languages, which basically means your manager on a monthly basis needs to do something small or something big for a team member to express their gratitude. If you know what each individual appreciates as their love language, your managers can then communicate to them in a way where they'll feel appreciated. If we do all 4 of these things, we compensate our team members fairly. We build a long and short-term plan to help them accomplish their financial goals, professional goals, and personal goals. And we communicate to them using their love language and the way they want to be communicated. Our team members will literally never leave. These are the 4 things from retaining talent you need to track for your managers and use and train to make sure your managers are doing what you need them to do. Now, if your managers do all 3 of these things, they execute the operational plan, they develop your employees, and they maintain your employees, your business will always grow. And to summarize, those are the 3 things you need to train your managers on to be able to grow your business. Now, I know this seems simple, but I want to acknowledge that this is a hard process. It's very complicated because humans are complicated. If your business needs help setting up this process, go to the link below and book a call with my company, 8-Figure Agency, where you'll receive a free consultation with someone on my team or myself where we can help you build this. If you received value from this video, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel, where I will be giving you value-add content every single week to help you grow your business. Thank you.